Welcome to Hungry Dads, your guided tour through the delicate and often overwhelming balancing act between food indulgences and social acceptance. And now, as always, here are your hosts, Rod Budget and Hugh Gallen.
Hello and welcome to episode 37 of Hungry Dads. I'm Rod Budget.
I'm Hugh Gallen.
And I'm Johnny Prime.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it. Johnny Prime is back with us with the Hungry Dads here tonight. We are ecstatic to have him with us. And in honor of Johnny being here, we're going to kick the show off right away with a new segment we're calling the Hungry Dads Test Kitchen. And in this first edition of Hungry Dad's Test Kitchen, we are going to give our reviews and our experiences with two recipes that came from Johnny Prime's own website. Now, we're not a cooking show. We've never been a cooking show. We actually don't talk about cooking all that much here. We picked some recipes from Johnny Prime's website that seem to fit the Hungry Dad's mold. To be clear, Johnny's website has lots of excellent recipes, many steak recipes and meals and real food. So we picked out a few of the more, I don't know what you're going to call it. I'm going to abandon the word recipe at this point, and I'm going to call these experiments because I do think they're more food experiments, stunts perhaps. Johnny, I hope I'm not insulting your recipes here. Just real quick, why don't you tell everyone about where these came from? We'll start with the chocolate donut taco, which I'm going to talk about my experience with.
The chocolate donut taco was really, there wasn't really too much that influenced me when I came up with that. I just thought that a flat donut would be awesome. And then it could easily be turned into a dessert version of a taco. So you got a sweet shell, you got some sweet filling, a little crunch element in there, a little sauce element, and then just get down on it.
And that's exactly what it is. So for our listeners who would need to know exactly what the chocolate donut taco is, you can start to make some guesses from the title. You got a donut that's been flattened, a glazed donut that's been flattened that makes your shell. You put inside of it some chocolate pudding. You put inside of it crushed nuts. You put inside of it some bacon and some cinnamon toast crunch. And then you top it off with, by your recipe, it was condensed milk. Am I right?
Yes, condensed milk.
I used Yoo-Hoo. That was based both on availability and preference, and I'll get more into that in a second. So I made the chocolate donut taco for myself, and I'll start with my hypothesis. Like I said, I'm going to treat this more like an experiment than a recipe. And my hypothesis when I saw Johnny's recipe and I saw the photographs that he put up, I said to myself, of course this is going to taste good. All the components of it are good. But the question on the table is, does the flavor combination exceed the sum of its parts? I think it's safe to say you take a donut, you take some pudding, you put them together. I think it's probably going to taste pretty good. But do those two things taste better together? That's really what a recipe is for. To be clear, the method is to fashion these ingredients into something that's reminiscent of a taco. First off, to address the hypothesis question that I posed. To my surprise, this flavor combination did exceed the sum of its parts. I got to be honest with you, Johnny. I didn't expect it to. Okay. I stepped into this and I said, somewhat pessimistically, all right, this is a cute idea. Of course, it's going to taste good, but I'm not going to bite in and say, oh, wow. And not to overstate it, because I'm not going to say it was the most amazing taste sensation. And I was uncertain that Cinnamon Toast Crunch was going to add anything to it. It seemed like an outlier as far as the flavors go, but it actually was just the right cereal to put in there. I don't think I would replace it with anything else at this point. Now, the thing that made it work the most for me were the nuts, and I used salted nuts, and for me that was the key. Without those salted nuts to cut through the sweetness, I think it probably would have overpowered in sweetness, and I think it would have been one of those things where you just threw it all together, and of course it tasted good, but I don't think there would have been any punch to it where you could call it particularly tasty.
Yeah, sugar coma.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest, there was still some of that. One thing I've noticed, as I've written a lot of different reviews for the website, I started adding a quick note about the aftertaste. For some reason, I'm starting to realize aftertaste is really important to me. I've done some reviews of some chips, and I wrote my review. I usually write them as I'm eating them, and then I go back and I add a last paragraph about the aftertaste. And I did the same thing for my notes on this. And I will note that just like when you eat a donut or anything very sweet, there was a film in my mouth. There was an aftertaste. I was very thirsty. The indulgence of this item is probably one of the key points. And I think that's where my primary concern about this recipe is going to come from. And it's this. This is one of those food items where you're clearly chasing good with good. You're piling on something delicious with something more delicious. And we've seen a lot of that in products. And I know, Johnny, you're going to talk about some of those products later in the show. And I think it's a fine idea. You know, we're looking for that balance between food indulgences and social acceptance. And I do fear that the chocolate donut taco loses a little bit on that balancing test of social acceptance. Insofar as I'm not sure I'd serve it to others. I'm not sure I would mention it to my friends that I've eaten it. And if I do, it's more of a stunt than a genuine kind of recommendation. What do you think about that? Do you think, what I basically do is I'm questioning its viability as a real food item other than as a stunt.
I think you're picking up on something, because the first thing that came to my mind when I created this was something like the Choco Taco, which is, ice cream truck fun thing. Like, it's an over-the-top dish to begin with. So, yeah, I think that social acceptance on the balance of the scales is probably tipped on the downside a little bit.
I will say with something sweet like a dessert like that, I feel like it is slightly more acceptable just to be extreme with a very sweet dessert-like thing than, say, hillbilly nachos or something like that. If you think yours was over the top, I don't know. I mean,
I can't wait to hear about hillbilly nachos.
So let me ask you this. What was your method of flattening the donut? Because that was my biggest hurdle when I did it myself at home. And you can see in the pictures on my website, it looks like garbage.
I'm glad you asked. I actually had a bit of a happy accident, or I guess a bit of a happy planned accident. I purchased all of my items at 7-Eleven, and that's one of the reasons why it's Yoo-Hoo instead of the sweetened condensed milk. But I stand by it. I think it was a strong choice for this recipe. But I was able to get everything at 7-Eleven, and in fact, it was after work. I had my work back with me, and I then very delicately slid the donut in my bag between my laptop and a book, and it just got naturally flattened on the way home on my commute. So it was not a lot of extra effort, but it took a little bit of planning and thinking, and it did. It got nicely flattened, which made a world of difference.
That's awesome.
It was soft and pliable, and actually was able to hold the ingredients, which was another pleasant surprise to the recipe. And I got to say, I expected it to be messier. I expected it to be less controllable, and it was as controllable as a taco, which isn't to say I had complete control, but I was able to keep track of things. I guess in final, my review is I'm pleasantly surprised that the flavor combination was better than the sum of its parts. I think it's extremely noble that you have created this, but I gotta say I don't have the confidence to recommend it to my friends, to serve it at a dinner party. I do think I could almost see taking donuts or donut sticks or donuts and like slicing them into sticks and then having people dip it into pudding. I almost think that could be kitschy enough, but not so disgusting as people might actually want to give it a try. So I think the flavor combination is good. I think the taco mechanism comes off as too indulgent.
Hungry Dad.
So Rod, I told you about my experimentation with a Johnny Prime original. Now you did one as well. I think you mentioned it before. I heard you right when you said hillbilly nachos.
That is correct, and you think yours was socially questionable. This was unique. First of all, is hillbilly an acceptable term these days? Is that derogatory? I'll give you my take, but is hillbilly okay?
I think there's actually a history behind it. And it's funny because it ties into where I got the inspiration for this item. The story that I heard, and I don't know if it's true or not because I saw it on History Channel. But
it's definitely not true.
But there was a group of people in Ireland or in the old times of England who wanted to get away from the king, and the guy who led the exodus up the hill was named William. So they named him Hillbilly. And those people were some of the first people to emigrate from there to here, the U.S. And they went up the hill.
The Hillbillies. Wow, all right. Sounds a little on the nose, but we could check the internet. I'm sure the internet would verify it. Now that we've added some academic history, I think you can safely use the word hillbilly, and we won't insult anybody.
So I'm just going to read the hillbilly nachos directly from JohnnyPrimeSteaks.com. These are the ingredients. You have your cheap-ass barbecue-flavored potato chips, leftover coleslaw from a fried chicken dinner, bacon or bacon bits, and easy cheese. And I'll just say I stayed pretty true to the recipe. My barbecue chips, they were not the cheapest I've ever seen, but they were not top of the line by any means. They were fairly cheap. I think they're called dirty chips. The coleslaw was not left over from a chicken dinner. It was store-bought standard coleslaw. I used the pre-cooked packaged kind of Hormel bacon, and I used the traditional spray can easy cheese. You just layer these, put a chip as the first layer, then I went with some coleslaw, some bacon, and then the easy cheese as the nacho cheese. There's a picture up on the website. You can see the final product. I just want to lead off by saying that the Hillbilly Nachos were a roller coaster of emotions from the get-go. So when I first read the recipe, my initial reaction was, that sounds absolutely disgusting. What have I gotten myself into? I don't really want to do this. But then, as I started thinking about it, I realized I'm a really big fan of all of these ingredients taken separately. I love barbecue chips. I'm a big fan of coleslaw. Bacon obviously is delicious. And I've always been a big supporter of easy cheese. I love easy cheese. So then I started thinking, hey, maybe it'll be good. So put it all together on a really cheap paper plate. I figured that was apropos. And as I took the first bite, you know when you kind of are, your senses are heightened, you're like trying to taste something, it's kind of in slow motion. So as I bit down, I got the barbecue chip first, which tasted, of course, great. Then I got coleslaw, and the coleslaw and chip together was good, so I got excited. Then I hit the bacon, which, of course, was good. It kind of enhanced the chip. So those three played together really nicely, and I was like, all right, it's going to be good. And then I hit a big goopy pile of easy cheese, and it was bad. It was terrible. The easy cheese just ruined it. And again, I'm a defender of easy cheese. I love easy cheese. It goes well with the crunch of a cracker and the cheese. I think here, it just tasted completely different. Like, I think it was almost too mixed in with other stuff. Like, when you think of canned cheese, some people are probably like, that sounds gross, but I think it's delicious. Like, I could just spray it into my mouth and eat it.
Yeah.
Whereas when it's mixed together with kind of coleslaw, I think the coleslaw and the cheese mixed was kind of the worst. I think those two, there was like mayo and cheese kind of mixing in, and it wasn't good. So what I did was I took the initial bite, said, this is not good, but I liked all the other ingredients, and similar to actual nachos, you know there are some chips that don't really get a lot of cheese on them, or they don't get fully distributed. So I went around and I like picked out the chips with just the coleslaw and bacon, and I ate those and left the ones with the cheese. And then, to be fair to the podcast, to be fair to Johnny Prime and to myself, I went back and ate another fully integrated chip, and again, it was not good. So I can confirm. And in defense of easy cheese, the other thing I will say is, after I ate this, I still had some leftover coleslaw, a few leftover chips, some leftover bacon. I went straight to the easy cheese, got some crackers out of the pantry, sprayed some easy cheese, and I ate a bunch of easy cheese because I was craving it, even though it made it bad, I had to vindicate it. I had to go back and have some. So, overall, not recommended. I would not do it again. I would not eat it. But if you're ever in the situation where you get coleslaw, barbecue chips, and some bacon, it tastes pretty good.
That's good to know. You know, it's funny because I've never actually tried this yet. So you're actually my test subject on this. The way that I figured this recipe out was there's an old bar near where I grew up. They have a dish called Irish nachos, and it's really thick cut potato chips, chunky bacon, almost like a pancetta kind of bacon, Russian dressing, sautéed or griddled onions, and minced chives. So I was kind of like inspired by that, and I wanted to.
That sounds excellent. Actually,
it is amazing, and I was trying to come up with like a low budge version of that,
an Americanized
low budget, and I was just like, I'm going to throw easy cheese on there and coleslaw, like all Southern foods, try to barbecue and coleslaw, but yeah, I think the easy cheese is the wild card of that.
Yeah, I don't want to get too stuck on easy cheese, but did you guys eat it like as kids ever, or have you had much?
I love it too.
What? Yeah. Easy cheese was not part of my childhood. I would say we had all kinds of snacks in my house, but there was some sort of judgment on easy cheese that it didn't make it in. Now I don't know why, but Cheese Whiz would get picked up from time to time, and I'm not sure.
I think Cheese Whiz is more socially acceptable for some reason, maybe because it's not in a can. But my main question is, maybe Johnny Prime will remember, I have vague memories when I was a young child of the cheese coming in like this sausage-shaped tube with like a hole in the side, and you would squeeze, it's like a pouch, and you would squeeze the pouch, and like that's how the cheese would come out versus a can.
Was that maybe like an old Velveeta product or something?
It may have been, yeah. Do you remember this? It just popped in my head today as I was having the nachos. It's like, I have to Google like and see if I can find it. But
it had like the metal clamps on the end of the tube.
Yeah, exactly. Like a summer sausage, but it was just cheese. And there was like a plastic hole.
Let me ask you this. Aside from the Easy Cheese, which I didn't think would be that bad, but aside from that, I thought that maybe the coleslaw would be too watery on the thin, cheap chips and just create like a soggy, disgusting mess.
I got a watery slaw, so that was a concern. And I think if they would have sat for a while, that would have become an issue. But I ate them pretty quickly because I'm a pig.
I do note that you said you got Dirty Chips, which is a brand, and they tend to be more of a kettle style, which probably was rigorous enough to withstand it. I'll also add that just on straight-up regular nachos, I've experienced where, sometimes some of the tortillas are soggy from the salsa in parts, or even from the cheese. I don't necessarily find that unattractive. So I think sometimes a soggy chip amongst your nachos isn't unheard of. If the whole thing's a soggy mess, that's a problem.
If they're falling apart and getting grainy, then it's no good. But if there's a little sog and ooze to it, that's okay.
I think I haven't tried the Hillbilly Nachos, but if I were to try it, and I might, I would be inclined to leave the Easy Cheese on the side, and maybe to give it a try, but not to inundate it with it. I really like the use of coleslaw here. I think it's a good use of coleslaw. I think it's a nice cold-hot mixture. I don't know if the bacon was hot or not, but I might go that way. What it reminds me of is if I were at like a church picnic or a family picnic, and I finished my meal, this is what might be left on my plate.
Yeah.
Some chip crumbs, a little bit of coleslaw, and some bacon crumbles from something, and I would just eat that with a spoon, and I think that would be tasty. So to make a whole dish out of it, but I think the Easy Cheese, as I think you guys have already said, I guess just there isn't enough of a hard base there to support the Easy Cheese, and then it just adds soft onto soft, which might just be too much soft.
Yeah, that's a good description. I think it was soft on soft, which is bad. Hungry Dad.
Coleslaw aside here. The reason I bring this up is because I put it on as an ingredient in one of my recipes, but I have this guttural aversion to coleslaw, and it's for one main reason: watery mayonnaise. I hate the idea of it. The thought of it makes my skin crawl. So let me ask you this, Rod. Would Hot Bobby be okay with straining coleslaw to remove excess liquid before putting it onto something, whether it's a nacho or just consuming it generally?
I don't think so. I think that's a no-go because I think sweetness is the main component for Hot Bobby, and I think the sweetness comes from that watery sauce. That's where the sugar is kind of housed, I think. So I think he likes his watery slaw. I think he's in direct opposition to Johnny Prime, which is good. That's the kind of stuff we're looking for here.
I must have had a bad experience as a child or something. Outdoors, hot sun, coleslaw sitting there.
It may be. I mean, it's a high-risk food.
Mayo heats up.
Yeah.
You bring up an interesting point about coleslaw, Johnny, because I used to work in a restaurant in middle school and in high school, and we had a salad bar that served coleslaw. And I remember they'd make the coleslaw, and it seemed to be one of the things that had the longest shelf life because we had to label it with how long it would be good for. And what I remember really remarking is that the new coleslaw had such a different texture than the old coleslaw. The new coleslaw was, freshly made with the cream and the mayonnaise, so it was creamy and thick. The old coleslaw, it didn't look old, but it had a different texture. It was waterier, and I assume that's because the mayonnaise would mix with the water that got pulled out of the vegetables. And when you think about it that way, it's actually fairly disgusting. But if you don't think about it, kind of like you don't want to know how the sausage is made, I don't want to know how the coleslaw is made. So now that I've told the story, I'm going to try not to think about it anymore because I feel like I have a mechanism by which I could judge the age of coleslaw. And I don't actually want to have that superpower.
But the other thing that I was going to ask you guys about is because I was listening to the last episode. Hot Bobby sounds like a very serious coleslaw purist, and yes. I like an apple in there, or spicy, like some jalapeno or something in there. Are those no good?
No, you're the new voice of coleslaw. He's the tried and true conservative coleslaw man. He's a coleslaw minimalist, maybe.
Johnny, you're a hippie. You're a coleslaw
cross
hippie.
Hot Bobby.
Never thought I'd say I'm a hippie.
A coleslaw hippie at that. Quickly, Hugh, I want to go back. You worked at a restaurant in middle school. Are there no child labor laws where you grew up?
Yeah, I did. I worked at a restaurant for years and years and years, and it actually turned into be a bit of a point of contention because I moved from the dishwashing room within months to becoming the assistant to the hostess, and this was kind of a rags to riches story that was never before seen at the Village Inn.
Wow.
So my move in from dish room, the dish team was jealous and upset. The bus boys and the bus girls really took offense to my quick rise to the host assistant position. I went from wearing a t-shirt and washing dishes to having a tie every night. Mixed emotions at that point in my life.
Hungry Dads.
I was down in Puerto Rico recently. I got to try some cool snacks. Nothing too crazy. There was a plantain chip and a yucca chip. As you might expect, they're a little bit more starchy than a potato chip, a little less salty, a little more sweet. But one thing that I came across in Puerto Rico was this thing called Limbers. It is. Have you ever had the Merino Italian ices in a yellow cup? You remember those with the wooden scraper spoon?
Yeah.
And at the bottom there was always like a quarter inch or a half inch of that really, really good, crunchy, delicious, gooey ice.
Yes.
Right, it almost felt like it hadn't been mixed in.
Yes, like it's settled, right?
Yeah.
This whole thing was that. So, and I was, as a kid growing up, that was like my favorite thing was the bottom of that cup. I would almost just throw out the rest and just eat the bottom. Flip it over, But this whole thing was that from bottom to top. And it was 75 cents in one of those plastic 8-ounce cups. This old lady was selling it out of her apartment. And it was the greatest thing I've ever had. The greatest cold snack I've ever had, I should say.
How many did you buy, John?
We had 2. We did a coconut and a strawberry, and they were both really, really good. The other thing I've got here is I've got since we were talking about stacking good on top of good, I've got Reese's Peanut Butter Cup Oreos. So they released two. They released 2 new flavors this summer. One is this spring maybe, peanut butter cup Oreo, which I have here, and s'mores, which I want to try next. But I have the peanut butter cup here. I can do a live taste.
Now, is the peanut butter cup an actual cup of some sort, or is it just peanut butter between?
It's just it's a standard regular Oreo with peanut butter. Chocolate cookie top and bottom. And inside, you can see there's like a delineation. One side looks dark brown chocolate. The other side looks peanut butter within the cream.
Ah, wow. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
So it really is a peanut butter cup within the two.
And my first thought was it might be too much chocolate because the wafer is chocolate and then inside there's chocolate again. So I was thinking maybe with I'm a big fan of golden Oreos. I like those better. Yeah, and like nothing's going to stop me from eating 7 or 8 regular Oreos, but when I get those golden ones, it's like times 5. So this one is, bags. It's a I don't know if you want to call it a gimmick flavor, but it's definitely a smash up marketing extravaganza between Reese's and Oreo, which is brilliant. So I could give it a try here and let you know.
First off, Johnny, before you do, A+, you're exactly right on golden Oreos. They're superior to the standard Oreos. I'm sure it's a controversial statement, but I stand by it. Secondly, I look at these peanut butter cup Oreos, and I'm getting this instinctual reaction that I'm still trying to come to grips with, and I've felt it with other products. I mentioned the Oreo donuts before, and even your chocolate donut taco. I'm coming to grips with these flavor combinations where it's just so clear. Okay, there's 2 delicious things. Of course it's going to be delicious. I guess I'm not impressed with it. I'm not sure I want to try it. And I'm not sure that I'm going to have a superior experience to something I might come up with myself. So in this case, the clear example is I would probably just take some Oreos and dip them in peanut butter if I'm so inclined. So why would I buy these peanut butter flavored ones? I am fairly convinced that the peanut butter flavor I'd get from real peanut butter is going to be a greater experience, less of a risk, and probably cheaper, ounce for ounce of peanut butter, I suppose. So I suppose it's an interesting experiment, but for all of the snacking we do here, I'm not actually that interested in buying an item like this. I don't see it as all that innovative. But I'm anxious to hear your review. That is obviously where the real test is in the flavor.
Yeah, it doesn't quite rise to the level of some of the fun secret menu items.
I'm just really jealous. That's my insightful commentary. I have to sit here and watch you eat.
All right, I'm going to get nice and close to the mic.
Quite a crunch for an Oreo.
Here's some good crunch.
Oh, you're getting? All right.
Sounds. My main question is, does it taste like a Reese's peanut butter?
It does.
Wow.
It really does.
Wow.
It tastes like a 50-50 mashup of Oreo cookie and Reese's peanut butter. It really does.
Well, then that delivers as promised.
Yeah. I don't know if I like it more or less than the golden or the regular, because I think at a certain point they all really just start to taste the same.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
there is
I think that's what it is with me and the gimmick flavors. It's like, do they really taste that different? And then it becomes kind of overwhelming. Like, there's so much. Am I really going to buy every single flavor that comes out?
Yeah.
I think maybe you didn't say it, but it almost seems like as you keep eating those, you'd stop noticing the unique taste, and they just start tasting like regular Oreos. And I just want to point out a quick kind of ongoing experiment that I'm working on our website. I have a page that's dedicated to kettle chips. I don't know if you guys have seen this yet, but I'm basically working on a theory with kettle chips, which is a brand of chips. They've got a lot of unique sounding flavors, but when you taste them, they really are just a normal flavor, but the power of suggestion is giving you a different experience. So for instance, they have a sweet chili flavor. It tastes like barbecue. It tastes like a sweet barbecue, and it's good, but it's really the power of suggestion that makes you think it's a clever flavor. Same thing with a flavor they have called maple syrup and sausage. Tastes like honey barbecue, but when they call it maple bacon and sausage,
right,
you start to get this like different taste to it. And again, I am working on the theory that it's mostly power of suggestion, which is not to take away from what Kettle's doing, because what they are arguably doing is creating unique flavors without blowing it out of the water like cappuccino and something crazy.
Reminds me of the great Simpsons scene where they're touring the Duff Beer Factory and Duff Dry and Duff Light,
all three,
and regular Duff are all coming out of the same spigot.
That's the best.
Hungry Dads. Visit our website at hungrydads.com. Follow us on Twitter at hungry_dads. This has been a Hungry Dads production.
I mentioned that I got all of my ingredients at 7-Eleven, and that includes the bacon. And the way I procured the bacon was not by going and buying bacon. I actually bought one of those microwavable bacon cheeseburger sandwiches and microwaved it, pulled out the bacon, ate the burger on the way to my office, and socked the bacon away to bring home from my recipe.
Hungry Dad's act right there.